Hello, I'm Bo, and welcome back to Bo's Books. It has been exactly 1 year since I posted my first video on BookTube. Isn't that so exciting? How fast time flies. It's already time to do another mid-year book tag. If you're interested in hearing about my mid-year book tag from 2025, I will leave the video linked down below and you can go ahead and watch that. But today, it's time to reflect on the first 6 months of 2026. It's so interesting to kind of sit back and take a look at everything you've read over the last 6 months. I almost feel like I haven't read as many books as I thought I did, because as I was going through the questions trying to think of books that I would choose as my answers, I felt like my list was a little bit smaller than I expected it to be. According to my stats on Fable and Storygraph, it does say that I've read 37 books so far this year, which is a lot of books. But as I was going through my list, it seems as though none of the books that I read, I won't say none, but not as many books stood out to me as I thought. What I've noticed is that a lot of the books I've read so far are kind of already slipping out of my memory. Now, it's been really helpful to be writing reviews and logging my reads in my reading journal so that when I do forget some of the books that I read earlier in the year, I can go back and kind of look at what I wrote in the moment. So if you don't keep track of your books in some way, either digital or physical, I would highly recommend doing that because it has helped me a lot. But even that being so, I still feel like I'm kind of struggling to remember the impact that some of my earlier reads had on me. For example, question number one is, what is the best book you've read so far? Now, according to my stats, so far I've rated 8 books 5 stars, but when I was thinking about which one was going to be my best one so far, it was a little bit difficult to choose one that kind of stood out above all the rest. They had really different impacts on me at different times for different reasons. So it's kind of hard to pick and choose between them all, but for the sake of this video, I'm going to do my best to just narrow it down and choose one book to answer each question. I'm also going to do my best to choose a different book to answer each different question so that I'm not just gushing over the same book over and over again. I want to really highlight different books and different authors so you kind of get a wider range of how my first half of the year looked as far as my reading goes. So my answer for best book of the year so far is gonna have to go to All the Sinners Bleed by S.A. Cosby. This is an author that I was really excited to get to this year. I had never read anything by him before, and this book did not disappoint. This book is a crime thriller that felt like I was watching one of those detective shows on TV, which is funny that I say that because this is actually getting turned into a TV adaptation that I'm so excited for because it felt like that as I was reading anyways. I kept thinking about this book after I finished it, remembering it as if I was watching a TV show. And then I had to remind myself, no, that wasn't a show or a movie, it was the book that you just finished reading. So that alone should be a great indicator of how vivid his writing is. I feel like he did an amazing job transporting me right into the town and describing each character in such depth that I felt like they were truly real people. I especially loved the main character of this book, Titus Crown. He is the first Black sheriff in this small southern town. The secrets that he uncovers and the crimes that he is investigating throughout this book are so heinous. You definitely should check trigger warnings, especially if you're sensitive to things happening to children. But I have to say, I was truly blown away by this man's writing. He is so intelligent. I looked up so many words and references as I was reading this book. I started to highlight every single time I had to look up and reference a word that I wasn't able to readily define. And I feel like my vocabulary has truly grown just from reading this book. It's interesting thinking about this book now that I've finished reading it and thinking about how I would absolutely reread this book, which is strange because with a thriller, once the mystery is revealed, it almost feels like the magic is gone from the story, but I would say not with this one. I would absolutely go back and reread this, even though I know how it ends and who the killer is. I just think there was so much depth to the characters, especially the main character. This is a book that I had initially checked out from the library, and then the second I got a few chapters in, I had to just return the library book and buy my own copy because I was so desperate to fully annotate this book. There was just so many moments that I wanted to highlight and underline because I really thought the main character's struggle with his faith, that really resonated with me, and I just wanted to underline all of those sentences that he was writing about that specifically. So I don't know, I just love this book so much. I'm kind of worried that any other book that I pick up from him is not going to live up to my expectations now that I have this one on such a high pedestal. From what I've heard, all of his books are good, so I think I'm okay. But I still think it's gonna be almost impossible to beat this one. I don't know. I also bought Razorblade Tears from him, so I'm excited to get around to that book and see which one I like better. If you've read an S.A. Cosby book, go ahead and leave a comment down below and tell me which one of his books you like the best. Question number 2 is best sequel you've read so far. So this one was kind of easy because I only read 2 sequels so far this year, and one of them was a 1-star read. So I really did not have a lot of options here. So by default, I'm gonna have to go with Learn My Lesson by Katie Robert. Now, I think I only rated this book about 3 stars because it really wasn't my favorite. I kind of wasn't in the mood for it, I guess. This book is heavy on the smut, and that's kind of all it is. So it is a BDSM erotica, I would say. So if that's what you're in the mood for and you want smut scene after smut scene after smut scene and very little plot, then I would definitely say go into this series. But I was kind of hoping that there was going to be more plot to this series, and I'm realizing now that that is not the case. I don't know that I want to continue the series now that I kind of see the direction that it's going. But I will say that if I'm in the mood for something like that, I know where exactly to turn. Definitely a fun time when that is what you're looking for. So, again, by default, best sequel that I read so far this year in 2026. I am so bad at continuing a series. I think that's something I really need to work on. There are 2 series, The Hunger Games and Anne of Green Gables, that I've both only read the first book for, and those series I really want to continue and finish because those I feel I'm going to absolutely love. I am just really bad at picking up the second book in a series. Definitely something I might want to focus on for the rest of the year. There's a part of me that really craves getting so deeply invested in a series where I read all of the books and I'm just sucked into the world and the characters, and it just becomes my whole personality for a little while. You know, I want to be part of something that deeply. It's just hard to continue when you really like a first book and then you pick up the second book and it just doesn't give you that same level of enjoyment. It also feels like a huge commitment to really invest all of that time and energy to one series. When there's so many books that I want to read, I feel like if I were to, just devote myself to reading the Anne of Green Gables series, I would just be reading those books for the rest of the year and that's it. And then all you guys would hear me talk about is Anne of Green Gables. So I don't know, just something to think about. This question is definitely making me reflect on maybe committing to one of those series and actually finishing them. Well, okay, let's just move on. Question number 3 is a new release that you haven't read yet, but you want to. And for this one, I'm going with Weaving Shaw by Heba Al-Wasidi. I don't usually get super hyped up about new releases, but for this one, I got so excited once I heard the premise that I just ran out and bought a copy. This book, I believe, came out in February of this year, and it is a gothic fantasy with, I believe, a subplot of romance. Now, the main character's name is Lena, and her secret power is that she can see ghosts. But this is a secret because if anybody finds out, she can get put into an asylum. So the main plot of the story is that her brother gets fatally ill and she needs to find him this expensive medication. So she makes a bargain with the Saint of Silence, who's this merchant who I guess can get her the medicine, but in exchange, he asks her to use her secret power to help find the ghost of the last lord of Weavingshaw. And I guess Weavingshaw is this manor. So they go on this journey to find this ghost, and I guess they uncover some dark secrets that were better left buried with the dead. So I don't know, I was very intrigued by the whole plot. And I heard that the romance is a slow burn, so I'm hopefully going to be into that as well. Fingers crossed, because you know how I feel about a romance. Number 4 is most anticipated release for the rest of the year. I have to say that at this point of my reading journey, I'm still not somebody who's really looking forward to new releases. I'm still trying to get through so many backlist books that my focus is kind of on the books that I already have, a bunch of authors that I still haven't gotten around to reading. So I'm really not looking for the next best thing right now. However, I did remember that one of the authors that I really fell in love with last year, Tatiana Shlote Bonet, is coming out with a new book this October. I believe it's October 6th of 2026. She's going to be releasing her third novel, and this is going to be a YA horror book inspired by things such as the movie The Descent. And this book is called What Feeds Below. At the edge of the city of the void, a massive chasm extends miles into the earth, its treacherous terrain overrun with vicious monsters and carnivorous plants. It sounds like there's these two best friends who take tourists on these guided tours through these caverns, and there are sections of the caverns that are just more dangerous as you get deeper and deeper. Well, one of the friends ends up getting lost, and the other friend is having to go find her. So it does sound interesting. I will say that it doesn't sound as interesting as the other two books that I read from her so far, but because I love her writing so much, I am absolutely looking forward to giving this book a shot as well. I also do really love the cover. Number 5 is the biggest disappointment of the year so far. Now, this is going to have to go to that one-star sequel that I was mentioning earlier in the video, and that would be Son of Rosemary by Ira Levin. Now, I'm not going to go into full detail about this book because I did go into a full non-spoiler and spoiler-filled review back in my video Highest versus Lowest. So if you're interested in knowing full thoughts, go back to that video where I do not hold back about this book. Now, I did go into this book expecting it to be bad because it was the lowest rated book on my TBR. However, I still consider it a disappointment because the first book, Rosemary's Baby, was so good. I feel like I gave that book 4 or 5 stars last year when I read it, and I absolutely loved it. I was just shocked that this was actually from the same author. I'll just say right now, if you've read Rosemary's Baby, just steer clear of the sequel. You don't need it. Just pretend it never existed. Trust me on this one. I'm gonna be real with you, I am starting to overheat because it is so hot in my house and I can't put the air conditioner on or else it kind of messes with the audio, so I'm just sitting here suffering. I had to take a pause and wet a cloth so that I could just like pat myself down because I am truly overheating. So I'm gonna try to do like a speed run through the rest of these questions. We'll see how it goes. I can't stand the summer. If you wonder why I have my hair up in a bun for so many of my videos, 1, it's laziness, and then 2, it's because it's so freaking hot most of the time. Whew, okay. Question number 6. Biggest surprise of the year so far. For this one, I'm going with The Ballad of Black Tom by Victor Laval. The reason why I was so surprised is because I had no idea that an author could pack such a punch in such a short amount of pages. When I picked up this novella, I was expecting a quick, easy, fun, horror, creepy read. What I got was so much more impactful than I was ever expecting. Victor Laval took a notoriously xenophobic horror short story by H.P. Lovecraft and spun it on its head. He gave us the perspective of a Black male protagonist, and this book is filled with so much passion and rage that I, just thinking about it, am getting chills of how angry this book made me. It touches on the subjects of systemic racism, police brutality, and the idea that some monsters are created and not born. If you're looking for a short horror novel that's going to pack a punch, I highly recommend picking up this book. The level of character development you get in a short 149 pages is so good. This is absolutely a story that I'm so glad that I purchased because I would no doubt read this story again. Also, the cover of this is so cool. Question number 7 is new favorite author, and this could be a debut author or a new to you author. Now for this one, I feel like my immediate answer would be S.A. Cosby, but because I already used him for another question, I want to pick somebody new. you already know that I love him and he is, in fact, a new favorite author. But just to share the spotlight with different authors and different books, I'm gonna go with Monica Kim for this one. I read Mocha, and this is the first book that I ever read from her, and it honestly blew me away. I know a lot of people weren't liking this book as much as her debut novel, The Eyes Are the Best Part, but I didn't read that one. So this book for me was actually a 5-star read, and I am really excited to go back and read The Eyes Are the Best Part and see how that one compares after loving this one so much. But the reason why I'm going with Monica Kim as one of my new favorite authors is because she did an amazing job at making me absolutely loathe every single man in this book. I love the way that she chose to bring light to an issue that is really not getting a lot of recognition, as in Mocha, these hidden cameras that are used to violate women, especially like in bathrooms. It was so heartbreaking and frustrating and infuriating. Authorities would not do anything about it. There was really no justice being served. And that just felt so real, unfortunately. And I feel like that was the real horror of this book, where people can go to the police and expect to have justice served, and that's not actually what happens a lot of the time. Now, there is a supernatural kind of element to this story that does kind of give you some sense of revenge for these women, but in my opinion, and probably most readers' opinions, it's not enough, and it's not as much as we would have wanted. For the amount of suffering that these women have to go through, I feel like it's just totally unfair, but that's the reality. That's the sad part, and that's what was so impactful for me, is that it brings light to this issue, but it doesn't necessarily solve the problem. And yeah, sometimes in a fiction novel, we would love if the bad guys really got what they deserved. And don't get me wrong, there is some retribution in here, but there's still that like sickening feeling inside that it's just not enough, because it really makes me think about how this is going on in real life and all of the things even beyond just the hidden cameras that go on, and all the real life monsters who never actually get what they deserve for having done such terrible things? And that's why she is one of my new favorite authors. I'm definitely excited to read her debut novel because I feel like I really enjoyed what she had to say here, and I'm excited to see what else she has to say in the future. Number 8 is newest fictional crush. Now, this is a hard one for me because I don't read a lot of romance. So right off the bat, I don't have any like obvious answers for this. So I'm gonna have to think outside the box a little bit. And I'm gonna go with Annie from the book Annie Bot by Sierra Greer. Because I think if I'm gonna choose a fictional crush, I'm gonna go with the sentient robot, just because I'm so fascinated with that idea. I mean, she is your perfect woman. You get to create her exactly how you want her to look, and she acts exactly how you want her to act, but then she's sentient. So then it's so much more interesting because she's just discovering her awareness, and I don't know, this is just so fascinating to me. Yeah, I have a crush on Annie. I would explore that avenue if given the chance. I don't know, very strange. I don't know how comfortable I would be about it in like if this was like real life, but in this fictional world where this is a thing, yeah, I'd try it. Okay, number 9, newest favorite character. Come on, this is a no-brainer. It has to be Princess Donut from Dungeon Crawler Carl. When I found out that Princess Donut was a talking Persian cat, I was immediately obsessed and had to pick up this book. I mean, I love video games and I love RPGs, so I already knew that a lit RPG was going to be right up my alley, but add in a talking Persian cat, specifically Persian, because I used to have a Persian cat named Audrey, and sadly she passed away a few years ago, but I absolutely love reading this book and thinking that this could be her. There are so many fun characters in this book. This is another series that I should really consider actually continuing. Somebody yell at me in the comments and tell me to pick up the second book in one of these series. Like, my gosh, please. Number 10 is A Book That Made You Cry. This one is going to Frontera, a graphic novel by Julio Anta and illustrated by Jacoby Salcedo. This is a YA graphic novel that I just stumbled across in the library. I saw the cover and I was just gravitated towards it. It's a story about a young boy who is crossing the border from Mexico back into the United States. He was deported with his family from the US when he was very young and forced to go live in Mexico, even though he had lived most of his young life in the US. So we follow his journey traveling across the Sonoran Desert, and we experience all the different things that one might experience on this migration. I love the way that the author made this a little bit more palpable for a young audience by giving this young man a ghost guide. So there is a supernatural element to this story that kind of makes it a little bit more lighthearted. But this book had me absolutely sobbing. And it's kind of making me want to cry right now thinking about it because even though we have this kind of fantasy element, to make these issues a little bit easier to digest, the reality is that this is a really heartbreaking experience that a lot of people go through. Like, a lot of people don't make it across. And there was like a part in the book where there's a water station that people have set up for the people that are migrating across. They give them these like stations where they can stop and at least get some water. It had been completely destroyed by the Border Patrol just because they're the way that they are, because of the hate in their hearts, and they just destroyed it so that somebody traveling across wouldn't even have water and they would essentially dehydrate and die. So even though this graphic novel is beautifully illustrated and has these paranormal elements and is written for a younger audience, it deals with some really heavy issues at the core of it. And by the time I closed the last page of that novel, I just sat there and cried, just thinking about all the people that are actually experiencing something like that. All the people getting deported, all the people that are separated from their families, all the people having to migrate across the desert, all the people that experience discrimination because of the way that they look or where their ancestors are from, or because they weren't born on a certain side of the border. If I didn't already know that I was going to choose this book to answer the book that made you cry question, I might have actually chosen this one as the best read of the year so far, which is kind of crazy because it's a graphic novel, and I don't usually even read a lot of graphic novels, but just the level of impact that this story had on me is truly unforgettable. It's definitely a book that I want to buy and have on my shelf. I've just not gotten around to actually purchasing it yet. But now that I'm reflecting and talking about it again, I think I'm going to do that very soon. Question 11, a book that made you happy. Okay, hear me out. Y'all might think I'm crazy for this one, but I'm choosing an extreme horror novella. This book is called Roll for Initiative, an Extreme Horror by Leslie A. Camphouse. It is a very tiny little novella about a girl who joins a D&D group with a bunch of guys, and essentially they are a bunch of creeps. Now, if you plan on reading this, remember it is an extreme horror, so you absolutely need to check trigger warnings. It is extremely graphic in a multitude of ways. The reason why I say this book made me happy is because the level of satisfaction I got from the revenge that this girl has on these guys is unlike any other book I've ever read in my life. When I got to the good for her moment, I was not disappointed. I couldn't believe the levels that this author went. I was just smiling the whole time, which is crazy because if you read this book, it is truly insane. But yeah, I don't know. I loved it. And hear me out. This is not the best writing, okay? Like, if we're just judging on the quality of the writing, it's not the greatest. But I liked the theme, I liked the premise, I liked where the characters went, and this was just a really fun time. Like, it was just a good time for what it was. It was exactly what I wanted it to be. For a short, extreme horror novel, I was not disappointed. This was my first read from this author, and I'm curious now to see some of the other books that she has on her backlist. So there was actually a character that shows up in this book that I was completely confused about, but I read in the reviews that this is a character from one of her other books, so now I'm curious. So yeah, I don't know, this was a fun one. If you like extreme horror, I would definitely say check this one out. Question number 12, the most beautiful book that you've bought or received. So I have to say that in 2026, the most beautiful books that I've purchased so far have been these two books by F.T. Lukens. These were very recent purchases at Half Off Books, and I had never heard of this author or either one of these books, but I saw these covers and just absolutely fell in love with the cover art. From a little bit of Googling, it looks like this author uses the same artist to do the covers of all of her books. The name of the artist is Sam Schechter. I did look her up, and I just absolutely love her illustrations. And if you haven't seen the video that came out just before this one, you can go back and watch that one because I do talk about this book in that video. It's the one titled Tarot Cards Choose My Next Read. I did mention it in that video, but I'll say it again here because we're talking about the cover specifically. But I was informed that the pansexual flag was actually on the cover of this book, and I didn't realize that when I bought it, but now that I know, I love this cover even more. But you can see the pink, the yellow, and the blue on the cover, and I'm just obsessed. It's a really cute story about a 16-year-old prince who's going on his coming of age tour, and he is pansexual. There's merfolk and magic and pirates, and it's really cute. It's a quick, cute, queer fantasy romance. And although I only gave it 3 stars, I did enjoy my time with it. I am looking forward to reading this other one by her as well. And for the last question, question 13, what books do you need to read by the end of the year? Now, there's so many books that I want to read by the end of the year, and I'll probably do what I did last year and do a 10 before the end video, so keep an eye out for that, hopefully coming soon. Fingers crossed. But not to leave you hanging, I will give you 2 books right now that I desperately need to read before the end of the year. The first one is going to be The Will of the Many by James Islington. Now, I've been working on this secret vlog that I started literally a year ago. And the thing that's held me back this whole time is how intimidated I am by the size of this book. I believe this is the highest rated book currently on my TBR. So I feel like I'm going to love it once I actually get around to reading it. But if you've been here before, you know that I don't really read big books like this. It's really hard for me to commit to something for a very long time. Hopefully with the audiobook, I can get through this a little bit quicker and I won't be stuck reading this for like an entire month. But yeah, please somebody in the comments tell me why I need to pick up this book right now, besides the fact that I need to do it for a vlog. I need motivation for why I should read this because the synopsis alone really isn't gripping me. So please tell me something good about this. I have heard that this is similar to Red Rising, which is a book that I own, but I haven't read that one. So I'm gonna need something else besides it's like Red Rising. Okay, and the other book that I need to read by the end of the year is what I've considered for many years to be my favorite book of all time, and that is Tipping the Velvet by Sarah Waters. This is a historical fiction book set in the Victorian era about a young girl who discovers her sexuality after seeing a vaudeville performance that involved an act by a woman named Kitty Butler, who is a male impersonator. And our main character, Nan, is so enamored by this woman that she goes back to the theater every day over and over again and sits in the same seat. And throughout the book, you just get to follow Nan on her journey of self-discovery as she explores her sexuality and her attraction to women. And you just see her grow over time and become the woman she eventually becomes at the end of the book. And I was just blown away when I read this story. It came into my life at the perfect time and was very impactful for me. And it's just a story that has stayed with me. I have not read this book in years. And I finally told myself that this year I wanted to reread it and see if it still holds up as my favorite book of all time. I also decided that I wanted to annotate this book, but not only myself, I actually wanted to pass this book around in what I decided to call the Sisterhood of the Traveling Books. So I recruited a few of my booktuber friends, and we decided that we're gonna read books, annotate them, and then pass them on to the next person so that they can annotate the book, and so on and so forth. So by the time I get this book back, it's not only going to have my annotations, it's going to have annotations from 6 or 7 other people as well. And it's just going to be so cool to read this book again and again, seeing the comments from everybody else and how they experience this book. I do own 2 copies of this book, so I will have a blank copy, and then I'll have a really memorable, fully annotated copy, which I think is just gonna be so fun and such an amazing keepsake item. I'm really excited about this. It's probably gonna take a year before it gets back around to me, but when it eventually does, I will show you the end result. So here is the before of my fully blank copy of this book, and someday we will see it again after it has been well loved, written on, tabbed, highlighted, and doodled in by myself and a few of my friends. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up this video. Let me know your answers to these questions in the comments below if you're interested in sharing. I would love to hear some of your answers and how the first half of your reading year has been going for 2026. As always, thank you so much for hanging out with me, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!